Welcome to Perspectives. From the depths of despair to a life lived serving others, Sia M'Bayo has lived an open life of transformation here in her hometown of Marion. She's been honored with a Community Service Award for giving back in so many ways, but she always points the credit to her Creator. And so we welcome Sia M'Bayo. Feel like one of my friends from church, one of our friends of the TV station here. But I don't know that we've ever zeroed in on your story that much. Many have heard it. But I wrote that line, from the depths of despair, and I thought, well, this sounds like a cliche, but probably despair was where you were at one point in your life.
Yeah, I remember that very well. It was a really hard time. It was after my son's father passed away in a car accident. My son was 16 months old at the time. My son's 15, almost 16 now. And I was just at the point in my life where I used to serve Christ and I was not serving him the way I needed to. Even though I had a son, I just felt like I needed to know what my purpose was here on earth. Like having a son, being a mom, being a friend, working, none of that seemed to bring me just, not only just pleasure, but just give me a sense of just worth. Because I knew if those things were taken away from me, I still needed to know who I was at the core. And I just found myself just in a dark place, just searching and seeking for just more. I wanted to feel like I was alive again. I hadn't felt that in a long time. And I just started seeking God a little bit more. And I learned in the process there were some things and friends that were part of my life I needed to let go of that I was not, because I allowed that to be my identity. So once I let those things go, I was able to just walk out in freedom and start to find life again.
I want to come back to that point because it sounds like the character in the Bible of Job there. Any one of those things, losing the father of your child, difficult circumstances, sounds like any one of those things would beat any of the rest of us up. So we'll come back to that. Okay. But born in Marion, Indiana, how long ago?
Oh,
we won't do the math.
No, I just turned,
in decades.
Yeah. Well, I just turned 39, the 16th of August.
They grew up in Marion, Indiana. Pretty normal childhood, you would say?
Pretty normal. Mother, father. My mom and dad did get a divorce when I was younger. My mom, she had to raise her brother, which is my uncle. So we grew up 8 years apart, but she raised him like he was her son after their mother passed away. So even though he was my uncle, he was raised like my brother.
Any great memories from childhood or difficult memories other than obviously the divorce, and that shapes anyone who's been through it? Any other kind of memories that you'd say jump out at you?
Yeah, there's always great memories. Had great friends that I grew up with, still stay in contact with. I think they helped shape a lot of my faith. My parents did not really go to church all the time. We were like the occasional, so we'd go on holidays or things like that, or when my mom was going through something very traumatic. And they were always in church, so they were able to take me through Bible study lessons and just speak faith words into my life. So I just remember those things, just being able to be a kid and run around with Barbies and, and just laugh and have fun.
I always wonder how that happens, how a young person comes to faith awareness when the household, the primary household isn't moving in that direction. Did you ever, as a child, kind of question, why are my parents not into this?
Yeah, majority of their life while I was in, when they had me, was working, just living day to day. They were struggling, so they had to keep a job, and that job required them to go to work on Sundays. So I remember just seeing them having to choose between work or attending church on Sunday. So my mom would always put me on a bus to, it was Lakeview. They had a bus that would come and pick kids up, and she'd allow me to go on
Lakeview Wesleyan Church?
Lakeview Wesleyan Church. So I was able to do that, but yeah, friendships, and then when we did attend church, those were the main things. I remember one time having a Bible that belonged to my grandma, and it was a King James version. I was trying to trying to read the words and kept getting stuck on words like thee and thou. And I remember just crying because I didn't understand what those meant. And I just remember saying, Lord, I thought you wanted me to know you. I don't even know what these words mean.
Most of us don't.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's what helped shape me. Just I always had a love and desire for wanting to know who Christ was and wanting to know more about him.
What about the teenage years?
Teenage years, oh man, I can say that majority of my attention went to just wanting to be popular. Wanting to fit in. So that love and desire for God started to dwindle because you want to be popular, you want to have the latest clothes, and you want to be noticed by guys. And so those things started to take my attention and my desire away from Christ. And I got into dating the wrong type of guys, guys who were into selling drugs and alcohol and partying. And that's where I would run to. Like I knew the foundations and the principles that I was learning, which helped keep me, and protect me. But at the same time, I would allow my desires to lead me in a wrong path. And there's times where I would be at the parties, or I was smoking weed, or I was drinking or whatever. But again, that foundation would always bring me back.
What do you tell young people these days? It is a familiar pattern. So many teenagers talk about those years the same way. I knew what was right, but I couldn't help myself. What do you tell teenagers these days when you have to counsel them or whatever?
When I talk to them, I always ask them questions like, I feel like they need to know who they are, like the foundation of who they are, because if they know their identity and their identity rests in Christ and not what people think about them, or if they're going to fit in, those are the things that's going to matter. Those are the things what life is about. You need to know who you are, what you want to do and accomplish. And then I try to build on their leadership skills. And sometimes people don't understand that they are leaders, and they get pulled away into following other people when they're really the leader themselves. So I go by just asking them what it is that they care deeply about, or what they feel like their strengths are, and concentrate on that. I used to love to run track and dance and worship and do different things, but again, I stayed away from that because I didn't have anyone to do it with. I didn't have anybody to speak life into those things, so I thought they were just dumb, but yeah, so I try to make sure that I'm speaking into those strengths and letting them know who they are.
Were you still going to church as a teenager through those high school years?
I was not. I would, well, occasional, because that's all I seen growing up. I didn't understand that. I felt like I could still have my faith and my walk with Christ separate from being in a community, in a church. And I would always hear growing up, like, God knows your heart. If you can't make it, it's okay. And I'm now starting to realize, like, yeah, he does know your heart. Like, that's something that you need to address with him. So, yeah.
After high school, what's next?
After high school, I end up meeting my son's father. It was not a healthy relationship, and still was going to college. I went to a few colleges, was able to get a degree, but it was just things that I chased. I chased money. Those degrees was mostly for money, where I was going to make the most money so I can, take care of my family. So a degree in accounting and a degree in massage therapy, electrical trades and engineering, like all these different things I went after. And it wasn't because I had a desire for it. I desired the money that you can make from it. And I found myself again at that dark point in my life. There was no purpose, there was no meaning. I didn't know who I was. I lost my identity in relationships and friendships that were unhealthy. And I just needed to know who I was and who I was in Christ.
We're going to come back to that point in a moment. When you say you lost your identity, unpack that a little bit for me. When you say that, I know you've thought a lot about that. How did that happen?
Yeah, I think it happens when you try to fit in again. When I was growing up, I can fit in with any type of group. Like those who loved country music or loved rap music or loved heavy metal music, those who were popular, those who they would consider nerds or wannabes. I had friends in all those groups. I didn't know it at the time that was a gifting that God has given me to be able to relate to people in different cultures, not so that I can lose my identity in it, not that I can become those things, but just so I can learn the language of the culture and find that common theme that they all have so that I can bridge everything together. So while I was in these type of cultures or with these different types of friendships, I took on that. Even in relationships, if I dated a guy who liked his eggs over easy, I like my eggs over easy. I don't. I like my eggs scrambled. It wasn't until I was probably about 25 that I realized what my favorite colors were. Because again, I fell in a place of whatever culture and group I was in.
And when you don't know who you are, you'll become anything. We want to pick that up when you were at rock bottom, because there's a great ending to the story. So let's take a quick break. More with Sia M'Bayo on Perspectives. Well, obviously, Sia M'Bayo still gives back to the community that gave back to her, and we continue our conversation. The community gave you a lot of things early on that may not seem as positive, but that was just kind of different crowds you were running in. You get to this point where you have your son. The son's father dies, and at what point do you find out the son has autism?
My son, it was 16 months after that, so he was 3, and I remember just thinking, this doesn't make sense, Lord. Like, we prayed and asked for my son Elijah. I know people who don't want kids or they'll abuse their kids, and you give me a child with autism. Not only am I a single parent, I'm a single parent to an autistic kid. Like, this just does not make sense. Nobody explained this part of following Christ, that everything is not rainbows and like unicorns and roses. Like, there are going to be hard times. And that just shook my core. And I just remember, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. But you gave me my son for a reason. And if it was not for my son, I would not know Christ the way I know him. I wouldn't pray the way I pray. I wouldn't fast the way I fast. Elijah gives me life and strength. I've learned from him each and every day. There's things that they said he would never do that he's doing, and he's going beyond that. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity of raising him.
Take us through that crisis point. Sometimes we talk about crisis situations like that, and there's kind of like one moment, and then sometimes it really unfolds over a period of months, years. How was it for you?
The crisis point, as far as just
realizing that I'm kind of at rock bottom here. What's next?
Yeah, I think the time where I just didn't care if I woke up anymore, just to be real about it. I was just at the point where I knew there had to be more than life than just waking up. And
you mentioned when we talked earlier about a prayer. What was this prayer to God?
The prayer to God was just like, Lord, I need to know what my purpose is, if there's purpose to life. If not, then there's no reason for me to continue to wake up. I guess it almost sounds like a prayer saying, are you real or not? But I knew he was real. I never doubted him. I think it was just my ability to do things without making him upset or if I wasn't bringing him glory. And I just thought, again, I was a single parent, raising an autistic kid, trying to make ends meet. It was just hard. And I just thought, the Bible says he comes to give us life and life to the fullest. And I feel like I was not living life to the fullest. What is it? Am I doing something wrong? Teach me and train me and show me what am I supposed to do so that I can have life. And if you bring that to me and show me that, I promise to be able to help others who feel the same way as I do.
How was that prayer answered?
That prayer has been answered 100-fold. I had the opportunity to not only live out my purpose, but also to see purpose in other people. And
I want to get a little specific here, because a lot of times people go through these kind of things, and we almost expect it to be like the movie. It's like you say the prayer, and then was it immediate? Did you begin to start results, or how long did it take?
Truthfully, I don't know. Like over a course of it feels like a year or even longer, but it feels like I'm still going through that process each and every day, because times do get hard, and I have to remind myself where he brought me from, knowing that he will take me through the rest of it. But after that, I felt like a sense of joy. I've had happiness before, things that would bring me happiness just for that moment, but he brought me joy. There was just a joy. People seen it. I would always hear people say, you walk around like, why don't you smile? I'm smiling all the time now. Even in hard times, it's okay because I have that joy. So the joy came first. And then I had to learn, and still learning, to trust him and submit to process and change, and what that looks like, of letting things go that will not bring me closer to Christ, but also things that are just going to drain me. I was just not living my life the way I needed to.
It's taking you to some interesting places too. Talk a little bit about some of the jobs. I know you've had a time at St. Martin's Community Center. You've also worked in church staff work a little bit in ministry. Highlight any one of those for us.
Yeah, well, ministry looks like for me, I'm in a local strip club here in town doing ministry.
We can't let that go by.
Yeah.
You did hear that right.
Yes.
How did that happen, to go into a strip club and say, I'm going to be a friend, and ultimately bring the gospel?
Yeah, well, long story short, when I worked for St. Martin Community Center, I had a secretary who would take in just different people to do some community service hours, and God would always bring different people in that, and would let me know that I should spend a little bit more time with people, like see if they need extra stuff, if it's food, if it's clothing. And there is a particular person that I felt like I was just supposed to get to know. Like if she was sweeping the floor, I'd come and sweep the floor right along with her, and just to get to talk to her and get to know her. And I remember telling her I felt like I wanted to be able to minister to ladies who were in the strip club. And I remember her saying, okay, well, why don't you? And I said, because, nobody's going to let me in their club knowing I'm going to be speaking about Christ, because I'm a pastor. And I remember her saying, I could get you in. And I thought, you're not going to be able to get me in. No, nobody's going to let me in. But I've been in there for 6 years. The main reason I wanted to be in there, because I understood what it was to struggle and try to make ends meet and take care of your family. Because after my son's father passed away, I would have did anything to provide for my son, anything, to keep a roof over his head and food in his mouth. And I promised God, once he was able to help me, that I would help others. And that week, they allowed me to come in. I did not think they would let me stay in for as long as I've been in there, but we're going on 6 years, and I have 2 other people that go in with me, and seen lives change. There's been 21 ladies who have transitioned out and in colleges and different other professions, and so God's doing
That's
amazing
kind of a ministry
things.
of quiet victories. You don't, maybe people don't want to tell where they came from, but boy, what great stories you've been a part of. And you've done a short while on church staff work. How is that different for you than other things in your life?
Right now, I just transitioned out of being a community life pastor for College Westland Church, and I work for Hope Bridge Pediatric Specialist as an ABA therapist. And that transition at first was kind of hard, just because I've been in ministry going on 9 years, and I just thought, is there ministry in this? Like, this does not make sense, this transition. But I see ministry in it. I see just the love that God has for the clients that come in, but also the staff. And I'm still able to be part of ministry. I'm still doing strip club ministry. I also volunteer as a chaplain at Grant County Jail.
And you've also done some additional education, if I'm right, if I'm not mistaken. What's that look like?
Yeah, I will be receiving my Christian ministry degree from Indiana Wesleyan next year. So I got my last class at the end of January. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for that.
Sum it all up. When you tell your story, Sia, it's so inspiring, but when you talk to other people, what do you tell them about this story that they should take away?
Oh man, when I think of it, I just want people to see my life as a story of Christ and redemption, because it really is his story. He's just allowing me to be the leading lady. But I want people to know, no matter their past or present situation, that God can meet them where they're at, and because he loves them, he has a purpose for their life. And I hope at some point the legacy that I leave would be that I'm a woman that steward life and family, relationships, friendships, and her faith walk well.
And you've given back in so many ways to others who may be struggling in ways that you don't know, but you've made that connection, and we thank you for what you've done to the community, for the community. Absolutely. Sia M'Bayo, a great perspective on many, many things. Well, Perspectives is about the stories of Grant County, as you hear, and Central Indiana people. And if you know someone you'd like us to meet, email us at wiwutv@nwest.edu, or you can send us a note to wiwutv, 4201 South Washington Street, Marion, Indiana, 46953. I'm Randall King. Thanks so much for joining us.